Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, members. To this very auspicious occasion, quite unique in recent years, and to open the proceedings, I call upon Father Scandal to say prayers. For a moment, we recall we are here in the presence of our God. Almighty God, we ask your blessing on this special gathering to honour the service to this town and council of our brother Aubrey. May this celebration remind us that all the affairs of the earthly state are carried out in your eternal presence. Help us to recognise the high privilege and responsibility of those called to serve your people in local or national government. May all that we do in that role of service be pleasing in your sight and help to build up a society in this place in which the gospel principles of judgment and respect are fulfilled and your name is praised. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Mr. Mayor and Council, the resolution before you is as follows. That Mr. Aubrey Hames, who has, in the opinion of the Council, rendered eminent services to the County Borough, be, in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government Act 1972, admitted to be an honorary freeman of the County Borough of Newport.
Councillor Jones, I think he's going to speak.
Mr. Mayor, it gives me the greatest pleasure to formally move the motion before Council. Mr. Mayor, this is an historic occasion in the history of the town. To be admitted as an honorary freeman of the County Borough is a high honour, the highest honour which is within the Council's gift to bestow upon an individual. The Council has bestowed its gift only sparingly in the past. Indeed, there are only just 11 individuals who have been admitted to be freemen of the town since 1909. Of these, only 2 have been admitted as freemen since 1945. And the last time an individual was admitted to be a freeman was 40 years ago in 1954. There can be no doubt, however, about the worthiness of Aubrey Hames to be admitted to be an honorary freeman of the County Borough as a person who has rendered eminent services to the County Borough. Aubrey is a former leader of the Council, a former mayor, an honorary alderman of the former Borough Council, and a councillor on both the former County Council and the former Borough Council. One of the attributes as a leader was his sheer doggedness. Aubrey is the original lateral thinker. There are officers here and members who today work with Aubrey, and they know that if you told Aubrey that something couldn't be done or something was impossible, that was just the start of the negotiation. So far as Aubrey was concerned, he would persevere and badger you until he got his own way, especially if he was acting on behalf of one of his constituents. He could also be very persuasive and was not beyond twisting the odd arm when it came that he wanted help. Who else could get the council chief officers to act as a beauty queen judges at the Borough Carnival? It certainly wasn't in their job descriptions. It was very difficult to say no to Aubrey. I know many of our colleagues sat around here today have gone to those occasions and have looked around in bewilderment at the number of people who had turned up and actually taken on that role. So I can certainly justify and say that as a fact. Aubrey was also blessed with considerable intelligence. The work he did for local government went well beyond this civic centre. He was a national figure in Wales and was a prominent member of the Association of District Councils. And I must say, what a thorn he was in the flesh for the new government in 1979. His perceptive letters to the newspapers, his leaflets delivered to all householders, drawing attention to the insidious increase in Westminster bureaucracy, and his taking to task the Secretary of State for Wales, all made him a very formidable politician. But even his political opponents couldn't dislike Aubrey or fail to reflect or respect his sincerity. During his time as a councillor, he made an incredible contribution to the life of this town. At one time, he was serving on no less than 50 outside bodies. He retired from the council in 1987, but far from retiring from public life, Aubrey continued to serve the town in numerous different ways. And to this day, he is still active in 17 bodies operating within the county borough. He is chairman and founder member of the Newport Action for the Single Homeless. He is chairman of the Newport Hyde-9 Twinning Association, and I think it's worth recording that the success of the Newport Hyde-9 Twinning Association was in large measure due to the enthusiasm and effort which Aubrey brought to it. I'm delighted to say that Carl and Hannah-Laurie Kubera, who became firm friends of Aubrey, and Mary are here tonight as Aubrey's guests. Carl, for those of you who do not know, is the former treasurer of the Land Trust. To return just for a moment to the list of Aubrey's contributions to the life of this town, he is chairman of Gertie, an organisation which arranges reminiscence sessions for the elderly. I think all of us will be looking forward to that. He is also vice chairman of the St. Joseph's High School governing body and chairman of the Finance Committee. He's vice chairman of St. Michael's Roman Catholic Primary School governing body and chairman of the Finance Committee. He's honorary treasurer of the Gwent Council on Alcohol and Drug Misuse. He's honorary treasurer of the Gwent Alcohol Project. He's secretary of the Apprentice Pass Hall Management Committee. He's president of the Rogerstone Lyric Society. That's something to bottle. And he's the vice president of Action Aid for the Disabled. He's also vice chairman of the Newport International Piano Competition. He's a member of Rangelot Community Centre Management Committee. He's a member of Gwent Drinkwise, and he's a member of Aldrine Ward Labour Party. He's a member of St. John's Council for Newport. He's a member of the activity groups within St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church. He's a member of Newport and Gwent Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He's a member of Newport Harbours Commission, member of Charter Housing Association, member of the Marine Safety Agency for Bristol Channel. He's a member of the Ports Panel of SCOSLA. He's a member of Shop Mobility, and he's chairman of Newport Waste Disposal Company Limited. Now the list, I'm sure you all agree, speaks for itself about the eminent contribution which Aubrey has made to our town. But what about Aubrey the man? What about Aubrey the man? Well, he married Mary in 1956. They settled at 66 Preston Avenue and had 4 children and 6 grandchildren. Mary, I think, is realistic enough to know 40 years later that Aubrey still doesn't know where the kitchen is. Frankly, in my opinion, with all Aubrey's commitments to me, it's a miracle he knows where Mary is. 40 years later as well, Mary is frank enough to acknowledge that she would not be able to recognise Aubrey without his characteristic moustache. Because he had it when she met him, and I think you'll all agree he has kept it in magnificent order ever since. For those of you old enough to know, the moustache was the insignia or badge of the flying man in World War II. And if I'm right in my understanding, of pilot training in the days when Aubrey served as a glider pilot, the type of trainer glider he would have learned to fly in would have consisted of an open metal frame, not a great deal more robust than a bicycle frame, a wing, a tail, a rudder, a joystick and a seatbelt. And this would have been towed along the ground on a kind of metal ski until it became airborne. I think when you bear in mind that Aubrey volunteered to be a glider pilot, I think you'll begin to see just how special a person Aubrey is. What impresses most about Aubrey, however, is his willingness to help others in need. I think all of us in here have an absolute understanding of that. The extent of his generosity to others is boundless, and there will be those of you present tonight who knows this better, frankly, than I. Many will know of many examples of the extent to which Aubrey and Mary's home over the years has been an open house to anyone in need, but I'd like to relate to you just one of the many small acts of kindness which Aubrey and Mary are well known for within the community. The weekly shopping, and I've seen Aubrey about this at the calculator and out the shops, the weekly shopping which they do for an elderly member of the ward who was unable to shop for herself. Each week, Aubrey or Mary will get the lady's shopping list, do the shopping for her and deliver it to her home. Now this they've been doing, not just recently, they've been doing it for year after year after year. And I believe it's typical of the kindness of the man and the woman whom we are honouring here tonight. On retiring from political life in 1987, Aubrey said, "I did my best, I enjoyed myself and got a great deal of satisfaction from it. That's all I wanted." I can remember that being said. Well, Aubrey and Mary, tonight on this historic occasion, the Council would like to say thank you and to honour you in the highest way which it can as a mark of the esteem and the very, very sincere affection in which you were both held. Mr. Mayor, Aubrey and Mary, I'm honoured to move the motion before Council. I so move.
Councillor Northcote.
Mr. Mayor, it's beautiful Newport and we can all take pride in being part of it. I didn't have the pleasure of working with Aubrey Hames on the council. He's such a ubiquitous fellow, however, that anywhere you go in this town his name crops up. It's very hard to find an organisation, especially a charity, in which Aubrey hasn't played a part, and normally it's been a leading part. Perhaps even more important than this is the friendship and help Aubrey's given to individual people in the town. It sometimes seems, when you're on the council, that you make very few decisions which are popular, but since the council indicated its intention to award Aubrey the freedom of the borough, I've heard nothing but congratulations. There's a genuine feeling of warmth in the town, and the general view is that we're honouring somebody who thoroughly deserves the honour. Even for a former leader of the council and a former Gwent County councillor, it's amazing how well Aubrey's known in Newport. If you say to most people, we've only made 2 men freemen since the war, Viscount Montgomery and Aubrey Hames, the most likely response you'll get is, who's Viscount Montgomery? Although we've only appointed 3 freemen in the whole of that time, we did award the Royal Regiment of Wales the freedom of the borough. It's an amazing coincidence that it was Aubrey Hames who sat where you are today, Mr. Mayor, when the council awarded that freedom. I wouldn't want you to read too much into that, Mr. Mayor. There are long odds against it happening again. Finally, I want to add my personal congratulations to Aubrey. If Viscount Montgomery was a legend, then in his own way, so is Aubrey Hames. Mary Hames is also a very special person. She's genuinely loved by almost everybody you can talk to. Between them, Aubrey and Mary have performed charitable deeds which most people will never hear of. It's typical of them that they just regard it as natural to lend people a helping hand when it's needed. And that, Mr. Mayor, even more than all Aubrey's council work and formal charity work, is why this award is so deserved. I formally second the motion, Mr. Mayor, and congratulate Aubrey, Mary and their whole family. I hope they're all proud of it.
The motion has been moved and seconded. So I'm now going to formally ask the council to vote. For those in favour of the motion, please vote. So unanimously carried. Honourable freedom with the category award. And perhaps, would now formally ask Mr. Aubrey Hames to receive at my hands the honorary freedom of the County Borough of Newport. There.
Mr. Hames, you take the Bible in your right hand, please, sir. Mr. Hames, you shall swear to be true to our Sovereign Lady, the Queen and the Lord of this town. You shall be obedient to the Mayor of Newport for the time being, and obey his warrants, precepts and commands. You shall be civil and obedient to the councillors of the same. And also you shall, as much as in your power lies, contribute and do every act and thing for the good government and safety of the town and inhabitants thereof. So help you God.
I will.
Mr. Aubrey Hames now has been admitted as an honorary freeman of the County Borough of Newport, and on behalf of the County Borough Council, it now gives me great pleasure to present you, Aubrey, with this casket which contains the scroll.
Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, boys. When I came back to Newport, having bought myself out of the army in 1949 for £50, being so anxious to get back into city life, I got immediately immersed in local politics, and it wasn't long before I was adopted as the candidate for the Kyra ward in the town centre of Newport, which consisted largely of the Old Marshes, the Queen's area and Baines Rock. On the first election, I failed by one vote to unseat the city councillor. Went a couple of weeks, didn't make any difference. The following year, that result must have galvanised more of our supporters because we romped home with a majority of 393. Mr. Mayor, in accepting this freedom, I do it with humility and humbleness. I wonder really if I
match up to the requirements. I've always had a feeling of diffidence about this. All I ever wanted to do is to serve people. I've enjoyed my life. I like to do a job. I do it, try to the best of my ability. And I always had the greatest satisfaction from doing that job. And I derived considerable enjoyment from the work. The work, the town, and more especially the work for the many constituents over the many years, so many of whom have their little problems, which are minor in comparison to the town's business, but immediate and problematical for the people concerned. And it's been so great sharing the joy of those people who've been successful. Sometimes also we've had to share in their sorrow. Newport Borough Council has been an excellent council over many, many years. Different in the 50s and the 60s in the present day. Then we had greater freedom of action. We had our own powers. And indeed, by law, we could hold the Treasury at arm's length. Well, we had quite a number of achievements in those days after the end of the war. I think probably the most successful, the greatest achievement was our battle with the government over the second river crossing. For years the council, and before my time, the council had been pressing for the second river crossing to be included in the capital programme. And always the same story in those days as it is today, they haven't got enough money. So eventually the government came along and said, let's have a compromise. We'll build a motorway north of the town, and we'll do something for you that we've not done for any town so far, and that we will not do again. We'll give you 5 junctions, 5 sets of junctions off this short length of motorway running through the north part of your town. And that should meet all the requirements of your local people. And be fair to the full council, both sides, in fact 3 sides I think you would say, we might even have had a wayfarer, and we certainly have a Liberal councillor. We said no, emphatically no. We want our town bridge. The government had to do something, so they called to London the 2 group leaders, Alderman Tyett for the Labour group, and Alderman Dogman for the Conservative group, and some of their senior aldermen. And they said, look, you've got to provide an answer, get together with our officials and come up with an agreed solution, and then you must put this to your council and get it approved. Well, after some time, the party came back from London, agreed. The government would build a monster throughway through the centre of Newport. It would rise from the eastern end of Chepstow Road, fly over the Usk, and land somewhere in the vicinity of Bellevue roundabout. 1,200 houses, pubs, clubs, and churches would be demolished. It would carry 6 motorway lanes and 2 local lanes, 2 lanes, 2 outside lanes dedicated to local traffic. I was fortunate at that time in 1953, 54 and 55 that we had a large intake of new blood, young Turks. And some of us got together. So we looked at the scheme, we studied it, we looked at the position on the ground. And quite definitely we said, no, it's not even as good as the first compromise. Of course we had a problem. But we fought that problem in another place. We won. argument to this chamber. Didn't have a well in those days, Mr. Mayor. And I rather think that Alderman Tyke so arranged there would be a free vote on that occasion, probably because he thought that he needed to save face. And we weren't there. He told the government what to do with its monster through. You all know what's happened. We've got our York Street Bridge. We've got the motorway north of the town, including still 5 jump sets to the entrance. You can take the other 3 out. I forgot on the too far advanced in the programme of construction. And the government is now talking about building another reserved motorway south of the town, which will carry another 4 or possibly 6 lanes of motorway traffic. Another achievement was, in my view, we went comprehensive long before it became a political football. We had a prominent fabian society in those days, and they were good. They don't know. I remember rubbish. We carried all the teachers' unions first. We carried most of the parents, grandparents of the pupils of the schools. There were a number of grannies, mainly, who were against. And one old lady I remember very well, a staunch socialist, but she was not going to have you people mucking about with our grammar school. But she accepted the decision in the end, good Democrat. And we couldn't go fully comprehensive because the government wouldn't allow it. We started the system with the old NSS, was it, Newport Secondary School, 2 new buildings, Dublin and Cartridge, and the other one was, no, before that, we had there was grammar school, of course, and there were 4 schools. They had 4 sites on the periphery of the town. We almost completed another great achievement, and this was in 1973. We had prepared a plan to pick up all the sewer outfalls in the river. I think it must have been about 26 or 28 sewer outfalls, crude sewage being pumped into the river Severn twice a day. We wanted to clear up the river. All the plans were laid, and these were included in our 5-year capital program. But what happened in 1973? A massive reorganization of the local government and other local services. And that plan was taken away from us. We lost that responsibility, and it was pretty low. 25 years have passed, and Water Authority are now carrying out the work which we planned and prepared in 1973. I sometimes can be a suspicious person, I have a feeling that if the European community had not directed that this work should be done, that plan would still be pretty low. Later on, of course, we could see the threat coming. We could see the Treasury was intent on strangling the initiative of local authorities and seizing on our power freely to raise local rates. And so we had to develop a different tactic. We started to examine all the hundreds of regulations that the government were pouring out in an attempt to control local authorities, financial regulations particularly. So we'd be looking for loopholes, we'd be looking for weaknesses. And I think probably our greatest achievement then, they call it creative accountancy now. But our greatest achievement was, first, that we built something which the government said we couldn't build. Yes, we could build small community centres. Yes, we could build small swimming pools for local communities, but you will not build a major enterprise as we did at the Newport Centre. Costs, I think it cost about £7.5 million. The other thing we decided was that we weren't going to sell the ratepayers with 30 years of debt, because the old way of building in local government terms was to take out a loan for 30 years perhaps, and for every pound you borrowed, over that 30 years, you paid back £5 in interest, plus the pound principal. And we could see a frightful state of something like, oh, I don't know what it was, must have been about £1.5 million per year from the ratepayers simply to finance the building of the Newport Centre. So we decided it would be built out of revenue. We had two strokes of luck. One of the stupidities of national finance, as far as the local councils are concerned, is you get an authority to spend money, but you must spend it all by the 31st of March. After the 31st of March, you've lost it. Okay, you can't hold it over. It may be a little different now, perhaps the government are relaxing a bit. In those days, what you spent by the 31st of March was what you put against your budget for the whole year. And what happened, of course, was the government had a certain amount of block grants to distribute amongst local authorities. So inevitably, with some councils, many of them underspending, I'm sorry to say, because they had bad managerial powers perhaps, others overspending, there was an awful lot of block grants unallocated. So what would they do? Well, they look at what the councils actually spent. They reallocate the surplus of block grants to those authorities which had successfully spent up to their budget. So we have quite a number of tranches of extra money, government grants, which you hadn't budgeted for, and which we could pop straight into our reserves. That built up considerably over a couple of years. We had another stroke of fortune. Government got into something differently. I can't remember what it was, but they instigated a national freeze on recruitment, didn't they? Maybe 6 months or 9 months, they had a problem. Public expenditure had to be cut. So they said all councils, probably other public authorities, all of you will stop recruiting. Whatever you waste by resignations, retirements, deaths, you carry those posts until we say you can be from them. I'm sorry to say, Mr. Mayor, that we were a little devious in those days, and we gave a number of the chief officers a rather rough time. Some of them, mine is quite hefty tufts of hair from time to time, trying to find, after the freeze had been unfrozen by the government, we still insisted in carrying on a modified freeze to try to make even more of a surplus at the end of the year. Because the secret was this. We discovered at that time that the largest part of the formula which determined the amount of grant we would get was based on our budget. How what we spent based on our budget at the beginning of the year. So we packed our budget to the maximum we were entitled to fix, knowing full well that we weren't going to spend it. And of course, with this mandatory freeze for 6 months or 7 or 8 months, trust probably falling on that. By the end of, I think it must be around 15, 16, 17 years, we've not only accumulated £1.5 million or more of our own money that we had spent, hadn't budgeted, but because now the government was trying to increase the incentive of local authorities not to spend, for every pound we saved, they gave us another pound up front. So we doubled up that saving, and we finished in the kitty with more than half of the money that we needed to pay for the Newport Ceremony out of revenue. We didn't have to ask the ratepayers for paying. There's another dodge at the time, I can't remember precisely what it was. It was probably some form of operating lease. There was a gag in those days where if you went for a certain type of operating lease, it didn't count as capital, so that helped you. But you could also go to the finance market and you get a most attractive rate of return, because private enterprise, of course, could always make use of tax allowances, and we got those benefits. So we finished up with a loan covering all the equipment on the leisure side of the Newport Centre. That must have come to £1 million. We paid for it over 8 years, and the amount of interest that we paid on that was less than pound for pound money obtained under this option mortgage. And of course, when we opened the Newport Centre, we closed the Newport Valves, which was losing money at the time at the rate of £1/3 So we saved a £1/3 deficit operation on the Newport Valves. That was probably one of our greatest achievements, beating the government at its game. And it's no good the government ever whining about the local government. It encourages us to be enterprising, to use our initiative. And when they do it, the government turns around and complains because they haven't played by the rules. So they build the rules, it's up to us to break them. I think the Newport people have always, the main body of Newport people, have always been very satisfied with local government in Newport over many, many years. I know you get your right in the local press. But then, we're all entitled to criticise, even if we criticise irrationally and perhaps unfairly. That's all right. And as individuals, we shouldn't be stopped criticising our establishment. But Newport people, I think, I like to think they're a special group. I well remember coming home in the early days of the war for 8 days furlough, and knowing that I would be none of my pals, because they would all be called up, or they would join up, or they would have been dispatched to the mines as bedding boys. But in one chap was left out, an old pal of ours, Alec. He suffered from Down syndrome. But he always used to follow us around, and he was one of our gang. My father told me that in the early years of the war, whilst out of the way, Alec would knock on the door, generally on a Saturday, sometimes on a Sunday, and say to my father, "Oh, coming out?" Dad would say, "No, Alec, he's away, he's been away for a long time." I said, "All right, he'll go away." When I used to come home, of course, no pals, I'd always walk through High Street into the first part of Commercial Street. And every time I would recognise at least a dozen or more faces, which I knew. I couldn't put names on them, most of them I had. But I knew that they were Newport people. And I felt at home. I think that's one of the big things about Newport. It's not too big. It's still a live community. It's a mass of little communities which can coalesce from time to time. But it's a people who stand in the road and say what they believe. You know, in the old days, when we were an isolationist state, whenever the country was called, it was always Wales and Munster. We ought to be very proud of that fact, that we were not Welsh. I were the English, very proud of it. And I often used to say that we, in Wales, in Newport particularly, were a county Wales didn't want, and England wouldn't have. And we were proud of it. And I think Newport people still reflect that sort of spirit. I think they're great. They know that they've got a good council. They've had a good council over the years. They know that over the years we've had a good class of officer very loyal and keen to do their work in the interest of local government and Newport particularly. They also know that council generally is a good council of elected members, good, high caliber members, and they've been very satisfied throughout. I said, Mr. Mayor, earlier on that I've enjoyed my job. I wish for nothing more. Just the satisfaction of doing the job and the much enjoyment that I've gathered over the years in doing this. But I couldn't have done a fraction of that work without the support and the effort and the work of my wife. She said to this person, you know, I didn't know my husband had retired until I read about it several months ago. But she stood behind me, Mr. Mayor, with that rod of iron. And we had a marvellous melody. It was the Queen's Jubilee, Silver Jubilee. And we had so many members of that, I'm pretty sure that if we gathered them up, we could include them in a few jumbo fun books. And we would have enjoyed reading them over and over again. Let me mention That's George Keys, a great character, a good farming stock, an owner farmer, and I think he must have been about 80 years of age then. But he looked so rude in health. Strangely enough, he was a staunch socialist. A great character. He's dead now. Rest his soul. Mary, of course, did the bulk of the work of raising our children. We have 4 lovely children. She predetermined their sex. Believe it or not, she did. She laid out a pink setting for the firstborn. Annette was born. The second time, she put out a blue setting. Robin was born. The third time, it was pink. And sure enough, Janine was born. Last year, of course, Don turned out and he had a blue set, ready to go on after he was born. I don't know how she did it. But there it is. They're 4 lovely children. I'm very proud of them. And despite my periodic intervention as a parent, despite that, they've all done extremely well. We now have 6 grandchildren, 2 step-grandchildren, and my great wish is that they will grow up in the image of their parents and their grandparents and step-grandparents. If they do that, they won't go wrong at all. Finally, Mr. Mayor, I mentioned about the experience earlier on, and I now realise that I can wash away that uncertainty. I don't know whether Mrs. Toby did notice here. Yes, yes. And Mrs. Ivy Hughes. Yes. During the 50s and the 60s, we had a marvellous band of ladies. We numbered 140, 150 in total. They were the ladies section of the Kyle Ward Labour Party. And they were great. And Doreen and I, would you stand up please, Doreen? Doreen and I were the babies of those great sections. Top section which met every Wednesday, but here. And the bottom section we met on Monday. And what a band of ladies they were. They were tremendous. They not only adopted me as their candidates in 1952, they took me on as their adopted son. And woe betide anyone who criticised our Aubrey. When I successfully contested the Guy Award, they selected John. And they did the same with John. They tucked him under their wing. He was another adopted son. And then was it first? And then our third year, John had been elected. Poor Percy, he'd been dead for a long time now. He was number 3, and he was similarly treated. And you couldn't have had a more protective bunch of ladies in their late 40s, their 50s, and their 60s than we had in those years, 1950 and 1960. They were really great. And I know Doreen, and I will share this with you when I say it. I can stand there and say that's, I can hold this in a way dedicated to those wonderful ladies in those earlier years. They were great. They deserved it. And I shall always regard them as my inspiration. Thank you.
Now, can I ask the